Hello, I'm Robert Benavides, and the topic for today is writing to a file. We will continue our discussion of Chapter 10, Files and Exceptions, and today's topic is writing to a file. So why write to a file? One of the simplest ways to save data is to write to a file. When you write text to a file, the output will still be available after you close the terminal containing your program's output. You can examine output after a program finishes running, and you can share the output files with others as well. You can also write programs that read the text back into memory and work with it again later. So in short, why write to a file? Persistence. See, before we would go ahead and run a file, we would ask for input, and when we like name, salary, and we would compute like maybe new salary or whatever. When you exit the program or finish the program, that data is gone, right? So what we want is persistence. We want to be able to run the program, like a database. Think of it like a database kind of thing, or like say you have a program that you have where you're wanting to maintain a list of your friends. Could be employees, right? You could, once you add them to that list, why do you want to have to add them again? When you run the program again, you want to list your friends and add and delete to those friends. So we want persistence. So we're going to start off with a very simple example of writing to an empty file. To write text to a file, you need to call open with the second argument, telling Python you want to write to the file. To see how it works, let's write a simple message and store it in a file instead of printing it to the screen. So let me go ahead and start Sublime. And I'm going to go ahead and go to File, Open File. Now I've already prepared these. So let me go ahead and navigate to that place. I have a folder. Let me see, did I get to the right place? Let me try that again. Where is that? I've got it right in here. Just a second. Too many folders. Folders are a way of getting organized, but if you have too many of them, it's hard to find things, right? So here are my programs. Let me just go ahead and select a block of them and bring them all in at one time. They're just simple variations of the same idea. So I don't have to type them in, save a little time. So yeah, this is what I'm going to go over. So if you'll notice in the first demo program, this is an example of writing to an empty file. And on line 3, we assign programming.txt to file name. And then on line 5, we say with open file name, comma, W. So the open function only requires one argument, but it requires 2 if you're wanting to write. So if you only have 1, it assumes read. That's why a lot of people just compulsively, if they want to read, they'll say open file name, comma, and they'll put an R in here instead of a W. But for right now, we're going to just zero in on writing as file object. So then we'll just say file underscore object.write, I love programming. Now, if you'll notice in the current folder that I'm in, let's go ahead and look at that folder. Let me navigate to that folder. In the current folder that I'm in, I don't have any text files in here, so I'm going to select that folder, right? So when I go ahead and run this, it puts I love programming in a file called programming.txt. If I want to look at it, I could open it up in Notepad, but I'm just going to do a file open here, and I see right there, see programming.txt. Let me double click on that, and I bring it in, and this is a text file. And so basically what happens here, if the file doesn't exist, it creates it, right? So the call to open in this example has two arguments. The first argument is still the name of the file that we want to open. The second argument, W, tells Python that we want to open the file in write mode. You can open a file in read mode by putting a little R, write mode by putting in a little W in single quotes, and in append mode with an A, or a mode that allows you to read and write to the file, which would be R+. If you omit the mode argument, Python opens the file in read-only mode by default. We use the write method on the file object to write a string to the file. This program has no terminal output, but if you open the file programming.txt, you'll see one line, and that is this one right here. I love programming. Why? Because line 7 wrote that, created the file, and put that string data in it. So this file behaves like any other file on your computer. You can open it, write new text to it, copy from it, paste to it, and so forth. Of course, he doesn't cover any of those commands, but they're available to you to look up on the internet. So this file behaves like any other file on your computer. You can open it, write new text to it, copy from it, paste it, and so forth. As I just said, it's important to remember that. So Python can only write strings to a text file. If you want to store numerical data in a text file, you'll have to convert the data to a string format first using the str function. So let's talk about writing multiple lines. So the write function doesn't add new lines to the text you write. So if you write more than one line without including new line characters, your file may not look the way you want it to. So let's go ahead and see what happens here. See, in this situation, I've added line 8 here. I'm saying I love programming, and then underneath that, I'm going to say I love creating new games. So if I run this, Control B, and then look at the output file, see how they're like scrunched together? That may not be the way that you want this to be. So what we're going to do then is we're going to include new lines in your call to write, making each string appear on its own. And how do we do that? We're going to go ahead and then simply just add a \n. So that's an escape code, and the N stands for new line. So if I run this and look at the file, I'll notice that I have both of those strings on separate lines because I included the escape code for a new line. So you can also use spaces, tab characters, blank lines to format your output, just as you've been doing with terminal-based programs. So now let's go ahead and talk about appending. If you want to add content to a file instead of writing over the existing content, you can open the file in append mode. When you open a file in append mode, Python doesn't erase the contents of the file before returning the file object. Any lines you write to the file will be added to the end of the file. If the file doesn't exist yet, Python will create an empty file for you. So let's modify this again, and let's take a look at what this would look like in append mode. So the magic to this is on line 5, and we have 2 arguments here, and the second one denotes that we're in append mode. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to add these 2 lines of text and add a new line character. I'm going to add those 2. See, right now I've got 2 lines already, right? So after I run this, it's going to add these 2 lines to those 2 lines. So let's go ahead and run that. Let's look at the output file again, and we'll see we've got 4 lines of text on here. So we use the A argument to open the file for appending rather than writing over the existing file. We write two new lines which are added to programming.txt. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the try it yourself. So let's go ahead and use Visual Studio Code just to do something a little bit different. All right, so in Visual Studio Code, you need to go ahead and open up the folder first. Otherwise, you'll get error messages. Let me just go ahead and get the error message first, okay? So I'm gonna go to File, Open File, and let me go ahead and navigate to that folder, make sure I'm in the right one. And let me go ahead and open up exercise 10.3 called guest. And this asks for the name and it puts it in a file called guests. Okay. And it's in write mode. Let's see if it puts it in there, you know. So let me go ahead and run this. And let's just see what happens. I'm just going off of memory. But we already know that Sublime cannot handle the input function. We know that. You know, you can use idle or VS Code. If you're using VS Code, I typically have to open up the whole folder before I ran the program or the script. Now, if you want to remain inside of Sublime, what you could do is just navigate to that folder and run it there. Okay. So let's see what happens. So it says, "What's your name?" And then I'll just put in Bob. Press enter, and I'm expecting a file called guest.txt to appear here in this current folder. So let's go ahead and see if it's there. Well, yes, it is there. What happened? I guess that wasn't the, maybe it's because I did specify the current folder beforehand. Maybe I need to be completely out of this on here. So let me go ahead and copy that and get out, and I'm going to go ahead and start Visual Studio Code again. And I'm going to go ahead and start a new file. And let me go ahead and then save this. And I'm going to go ahead and save it. Let's just go ahead and save it on the desktop. And I'll just call it demo. All right, so let me go ahead and run it. And what is your name? I guess maybe it wasn't an issue. It doesn't hurt you to open up the folder, you know. So what's your name, Bob? All right, so then I come over here to File, Open File. Let's see if it is there. I guess it wasn't an issue. Let's see. This is what's called testing. I don't see it on the desktop. Where is the file? And that's why I like to create a folder first, so that I don't have to be like searching all over the place. And I'm looking for the file called guest. So let me go ahead and see if I can find it. I've got demo on here. Of course, it could have been on my other folder here. I don't see it in my other folder here. So I probably should have created a folder first so I can see where I am on this. But I don't see it there. So that could be probably a good reason why you want to go ahead and create your folder first and work there. Now you don't have to be like hunting all over the darn place, you know. So this is what I would typically do. I would go ahead and I could do this inside of Visual Studio Code. Like for example, in here, you know, I could go ahead and go. I could go to Open Folder, go to the desktop, and then I could create a new folder, and then let me just call it my work. This is a good example of, you know, creating folders and stuff if I haven't had a chance to do that with you all. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my work, and this is where I'm going to do my work. I've selected the folder. Okay. So everything is inside here now, right? This is where, like, if I go to File, New File, it's going to be inside of there, right? So when I save this, it's going to be inside of my work. And that's the way I like to work. I like to work inside of a folder anyway, so I won't get, you know, if I have a lot of files and I want to be able to keep, I want to have my data file, you know, where I can find it really fast on here. So I'm saving demo inside of my work. All right, so so if I run this right now, it says, what's your name? And I'm just going to go ahead and put Bob and press enter. Notice how now I'm able to find it because I either dumbed it down or who knows where guest.txt was being stored. Maybe I didn't get an error message, but you know, creating a folder first is the simple way for me to do it. I mean, that's the way, this is the way I do it. I always create a folder first. So that if I'm working with something, these are the only, if these are the things that I'm working on, then definitely I can go ahead and find them readily without hunting all over the place here, okay? All right, so if I go to it, open up the current stuff, I'm gonna go ahead and go to open folder. And I'm gonna go ahead and navigate to the folder that I want. And I'm gonna go to, where is it? On the desktop, Python work. And let's go to chapter 10. Now this is what you go through if you have a lot of folders, guys. All right, so this is the folder. Actually, I'm gonna go, we're doing the try it yourself. So this is the current folder that I wanna be in, so I'm gonna select it. All right, so that if I click on this folder now, I can see these are the previous files that I have created. I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of guest, because that's the text file. And let me go ahead and open up these 3 programs. So this is the first one that I want to go ahead and run on here. And let me go ahead and run it. So what's your name? Fred. Okay, so then the file gets created. If I double click on it, I see that Fred is inside there. Now I'm going to close this, but I know that this is my, you know, my folder window. I'm inside of a folder called, you know, try it yourself. That, you know, it's got a big, so I'm just going to collapse that on here so that I can move on to my next little demonstration on here. So that's guest. So what we did is we in 10_screen, we had an input. We used the input function on line 2, and we asked, what's your name? So we put that in name. And then we said, open that file name for write, and we wrote the name to that file object. Now, I know I probably should have said file object instead of F, so forgive me there, since I preach on the importance of using descriptive file names. You know, so let's go ahead and take a look at our next example, 10.4, called the guest book. So it says, write a while loop that prompts the user for their name. When they enter in their names, print a greeting to the screen and add a line recording their visit in a file called guest_book.txt. Make sure each entry appears in a new line in the file. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this on here. So what is your name? I'm going to go ahead and put in, I guess I'll use mine, right? So hi, Robert, you've been added to the guest book. And of course, if you look at the logic on here, if I enter in quit, it'll start. So let me add in another person. Okay, now I'm going to type in quit. All right. And it breaks, right? So if I come over here, I'll notice that now I've got this file called guest_books. And so it has simplified my life a little bit to like work inside of a folder. See, I have been doing this on the desktop and I've got a million things on the desktop. You know, it's kind of hard to like put everything together for your little head or my little head. So now if I double click on this, I can verify that I've got Robert, Betty, Chris, and Liz. And of course, why? That happened because I prompted, right? I said, at the very top, I say enter quit when you're finished. So I say, what's your name? I entered in Robert, and it simply uses a formatted string to go ahead and say, hi, Robert, you've been added to the guest book. Okay. But what happens here is that if name is equal to quit, on line 11, we break. Now that's brute force exit, right? I mean, that's like a slap in the face. You know, like we're not setting the loop to false or anything like that, which is a more graceful way to get out. We're just saying break. So when quit is put in for name, we no longer read the rest of this with the we just exit this loop, and there's no more code after this. You know, if we wanted to, let's see what would happen if we would just put this in here, and we'll have a little print statement. Say the end. You know, so let me go ahead and run this again, and then what's your name? Bob. Bob's been added. Betty, and then quit, and it says the end. Right, so notice how I put that. It breaks out of the loop, and it comes to this next line 17, and then it reads line 18 on here. So that's what break does. It's a brute force exit of this loop on here. Okay. And the magic in this particular demonstration is, you know, we're opening a file in append mode, right? Open the file in append mode, and we're writing to this guest book. So if I open up the guest book, notice how I've got Robert, Betty, Chris, Liz, and then I added Bob and Betty lowercase, right? So it's in append mode. That means that it was not, see, the previous situations where we did write and we added a couple lines to it, well, the previous couple lines were gone, right? So it completely rewrites when you have write. And append means whatever is there, all you're doing is just adding something to it, and that's what's going on here. Again, my file object, I'm just using F, but you should probably have a more descriptive file name on here. I'm simply using a formatted string on line 15 to write the names. I'm not even using, you know, dot title method to capitalize the first character, which I could add that very easily to this. If I could make a nice little enhancement to it. So let's go on to the next one on here is write a while loop that asks people why they like programming. Each time someone enters the reason, add their reason to a file that stores all the responses. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a quick look at this one. So I'm going to go ahead and assign a string called programming_poll.text to file name. And I'm going to initialize a list on line 4, an empty list. And then I'm going to start my while loop, or my first while loop. I'm going to set it to true, and I'm going to prompt for why do you like programming? And that's going to go into response, which is a string. And then I'm going to go ahead and append that to responses. So responses is a list. So every time I go through this, I'm going to go ahead and be adding to this list. Then I'm going to say, would you like to let someone else respond? Y, N. And that's going to go into continue poll variable. Now, then we're going to perform a test. We're going to say if continue poll not equal to Y, then we're going to brute force break again. Because we're simply using the crudest kind of loop on here. We didn't set a flag. Remember how before we learned about how we can set a flag up? I think it's a kinder or a more way to go ahead and exit is to set the flag to true, and then, you know, if continue poll is equal to N, then set the flag to false so that you can then exit out of this. But break works just as good, I guess. You know, I mean, depends on which one you like, which style you like. At the bottom on here, we're going to say with open. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and write, the responses in here, right? So this is simply the prompt. We're putting in the responses into a list, and then what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and for each response in responses, we're going to go ahead and then append that. So let's go ahead and run it and see what it looks like. So why do you like programming? That's our prompt right there on line 6. See that? So why do you like programming? Oh God, what do I say? Like, because I can build whatever I can imagine. Is that like the right answer or what? I mean, come on. So I press enter, and then would you like to go ahead and let someone else respond? And then you say, why? Why do you like programming? Because it's fun. How about an exclamation point, right? Would you like someone else to respond? N. And I probably should have done this in debug mode, but I think I've done that enough so you know how the flow of control is going to go on here. We say N, and that terminates this. So let's go ahead and look at the file. We're looking for the file called programming poll. Let's go ahead and look at that. So it goes and show it. Now I can see what's inside of the text file. And I did, I misspelled because twice, so you can hit me on that one. But let me go ahead and so this is the end of this demo. So what do we have here? We've got a prompt to get the data in, right? And then we go ahead and write that data, to the file. Again, let's make sure we understand what's going on here. On line 2, we say, hey, we're gonna have a file name, and it's gonna be called programming_poll.txt. Then I'm gonna prompt for what do you like in programming, and I'm gonna be appending that to a list. And then I'm gonna go ahead and say, hey, do you want to let someone else? And if it's not equal to y, which means n, then we'll break. But when that breaks, it breaks out of that loop from line 5. It goes down to line 13. And what happens in that particular time then is that we then finally open the file for append. And we write each response in responses, which that list is, we write that to the file. And as each response is getting a new line character. So that, for example, right now, I've got 2 things in here, and give me an opportunity to spell because correct. So let me go ahead and run it. Let me run it one more time, guys. And why do you like programming? Didn't spell it right. I'm just not good at spelling it because I can make, not a good answer. Is anybody doing it for the money? All right, so now let's go ahead and look at this. And since we're in append mode, we are expecting to see that one new thing added to the other things that I added on here. Because I can build whatever I can imagine, because it's fun, because I can make a lot of money. So finally I spelled because correctly, and actually I misspelled more things inside of the comments than anywhere else on here. So that's the end of this section on writing, to files. Is very, we learned about how to read. In this section we learned how to write, and in the next section we'll go ahead and learn about exceptions, and then finally we'll learn about JSON. So hopefully you're picking up a thing or two, and Professor Benavides, over and out.